Well, welcome back. I thought you'd be too scared to return. Oh well, maybe these stories will inspire you to know what true fear is. Well, let's dive right in, shall we? Our first story of the night comes from a young lady that has an unexpected visitor one night. It's called Ghosts in the Ghetto.
As a young mom, I couldn't afford much. There were these low rental units just off of 22nd Street. The owner of this building was basically a slumlord. I got to give him some credit though. He did attempt to renovate, and he evicted all the problematic tenants that used to live there. The building manager was being more picky about who they let in the building now too. So that was why the apartment building was half empty when I moved in there with my 3-year-old. We got to know the neighbors quick. I met a woman named Rebecca. She told me that her previous boyfriend passed away from heart complications not too long ago. Then she told me how his friend Jim was there for her and how they leaned on each other during their time of mourning. She said she moved out of her place to live with Jim in his basement suite. She wasn't much older than I was. Pretty with dark curly hair, pale skin. I nodded my head and commiserated with her. It was good that they had each other. Grief was hard enough on your own. If you can find a shoulder to lean on, then it was that much lighter. They offered me a beer, but I declined. And that was Rebecca. I was curled up on my couch watching TV alone one night. It was well after midnight when someone knocked on my door. My immediate thought was, who the hell would be knocking on my door at this hour? My nosy self headed over to look into the peephole. Standing there in the hallway under the fluorescent lighting was this older gentleman. He was wearing a short-sleeved, colorful print shirt, khaki shorts, and brown sandals. He was a white guy with silver, messy, medium-length hair. He had a bit of a paunch. I opened the door. He looked at me with these sad blue eyes. He asked, "Is Rebecca home?" I furrowed my brow and then told him that she didn't live in this unit anymore. I told him that she moved into Unit 3 downstairs. The expression on his face after I said that, it was a mix of surprise, disappointment, and something else. He quickly looked at his feet. I went to close the door, but he looked up at me, then he said that he was thirsty. He asked me if I could please give him a glass of water. I was taken aback a bit because what a strange request. Ever the helpful person, I said, "Sure, but stay there." I shut the door, locked it, and then headed to the kitchen. I ran the cold tap water into a mug, then I unlocked the door. I opened it, and as I was handing him the water, I got this strong gut feeling to not touch his skin. I carefully avoided his fingers. He took a few sips and then he handed the mug back. I don't know why, but I suddenly felt alarmed. Danger. I didn't let his hand touch mine. Then I closed the door quickly. My heart sped up a bit. The hallway was chilly and my fingertips felt cold. I peeked into the peephole and there was no one there. I was uncomfortable the rest of the night. Like, why did I tell him where Rebecca lived? I shouldn't have done that. I felt like I did something really wrong. It was if I just gave a permission of some kind, or I just allowed something to happen. Honestly, I don't remember if these things happened before or after that night, but the lights would burn out, especially the dining room light. It was frequent enough that I asked management to check the electrical. They said everything was good. There was nothing broken or loose in the wiring. I ended up just leaving the dining room dark. My BF was over one evening. The three of us were watching TV together in the living room. My BF got up to make himself a sandwich. There was an old wooden room divider between the two rooms. We could see him at the counter fixing his snack. We had our own on the coffee table. My BF had to walk around the divider through the dark dining room area to get into the kitchen. My 3-year-old said, "Mommy, why is that man staring at us?" I asked. "What man? Where is he?" My 3-year-old pointed to the dark dining room area. I looked, but of course no one was there. I was really creeped out, but I asked, "What does he look like?" "He has big fat eyes and his hair is like this." Then my child showed me with their little hands how the man's hair stuck out, then made wavy fingers. I didn't want to scare my baby, so I pretended that what they said didn't frighten me. My BF, on the other hand, was still in the kitchen and he paused mid-slice after he heard that. Then my 3-year-old said, "He is your friend who shuts off the lights." I shuddered. I wrapped my child up in the blankets, and my BF came over to join us. I stayed up that whole night just watching over them.
Oh, I see, you don't want to scare your baby, but it's okay to scare us. Gee, thanks. But you know what I was wondering? I was wondering if that might have been Rebecca's dearly departed boyfriend. Just curious is all. Our next spook fest is from someone that had a ghost in her house as a kid. We call it the ghost in my childhood home.
Growing up, I always felt like someone else was in the house with us. Little things would happen. Lights turning on by themselves, random footsteps upstairs when no one was there, but we all brushed it off as old house noises. One night, I woke up to the sound of shuffling in the hallway. I thought it was my mom, so I called out, but no one answered. Then, clear as day, I saw a figure standing in my doorway. It was tall, shadowy, and completely still. I froze, too scared to move. After what felt like forever, it turned and walked away. I bolted to my parents' room, and my mom swore she hadn't been up. My dad joked it was the house ghost, but I didn't sleep in my room for a week. Years later, when we were moving out, my mom admitted she'd seen it too. She just didn't want to scare me. To this day, I still get chills thinking about it.
Wait, she didn't want to scare you? What? You didn't look scared already? Our next one comes from an English dude that tells how he was terrified by an unwanted resident of his home. It's called The Upstairs Ghost.
When I was 14, my two brothers and mum moved homes. It was a council house in my hometown of Lee, Greater Manchester. It took us about 1 month to decorate and get settled in when we all started hearing noises coming from upstairs. It sounded like footsteps and switches being turned on and off. At the time we had 3 cats, and they were all very hesitant to go upstairs, and when we could hear the noises the cats would look up and follow the sound, and if we picked any of the cats up to take them upstairs they would struggle with us and make it clear they didn't want to go up. After several months of living there, the noises would get more often, and then one night my mum said she was in bed reading and she felt one side of her bed dip down, and it felt like someone sitting at the side of her. After being there for 4 years we were all used to it, and the noises seemed to settle down, and even the cats would venture upstairs. One of them would even sleep in me and my brother's bedroom, as at the time I shared a room with my younger brother. When I turned 18 my older brother had moved out and my mum got a job managing a pub and she moved into a flat above it, so it was just me, my younger brother and cats living there now. I quickly moved into my older brother's old room, which was my first time having my own room. I quickly made it my own, and my younger brother used the extra space in his room to get a weightlifting bench. He didn't use it much and he would hang his clothes on hangers on the bar. This played a part in what happened next. One night I had gone to bed as normal at 10 p.m. and I quickly fell to sleep. After a few hours I was woken up by a loud sound from my brother's room. I quickly jumped out of bed and opened my brother's door, and the cat came running out, and my brother had clearly just woken up as well. I immediately noticed that the clothes my brother had hung on his barbell were swaying back and forth, and the sound that woke us up was the bar that had 60 kilograms on it plus the clothes had been picked up and dropped back down. We were both a bit freaked out because that was the loudest thing we had heard from the house, but nothing like that happened again until a time when my younger brother had gone to Spain with my mum, and I was on my own in the house, but I had booked a trip with friends to Ibiza. The night before our flight I asked one of my friends to stay at my house because he was a heavy sleeper, and it was difficult to wake up and we didn't want him to be late for the flight. He came to my house at around 4 p.m. I had already told him that he might hear the footsteps upstairs, but I don't think he believed me. As it was summer, it was a very warm day, so I had the back door open to let some breeze in and we both sat in the living room. Then the footsteps started. My friend knew there was only us in the house because anybody else would have to walk past us to go upstairs. Then the footsteps got louder, a lot more than usual, and then all of a sudden it sounded like a very large person running down the stairs. We both ran out of the house before whatever it was reached the bottom step. My friend refused to go back in, And I reluctantly went back in to get my passport and luggage and to feed the cats and leave them some water because my older brother would come the next day to feed them until my younger brother came back. Nothing much happened after that. I speculate that whatever it was used to me and my brother's presence and didn't like new people in the house. About 2 years later we moved out of the house and a new tenant moved in, and about 6 months later the new tenant went in my mum's pub and asked if we experienced any strange things in the house. My mum told them the truth but told them it was harmless, and they'll get used to it. If you made it to the end, thank you and sorry it was so long-winded.
Before we get into our next tale, I just want to take a moment to remind you to, assuming your hands are not trembling with terror at the moment, hit like and subscribe. It'll really raise our spirits, so to speak. And if you don't, I swear I'll come and haunt your house. I'll rattle chains at all hours of the night, yell boo while you're trying to sleep. I'll raid your fridge, and I'll, try on all your clothes and stuff. Just a lot of scary stuff. Anyway, the next one comes from a woman that had some pretty odd things happen in the house she grew up in. This one is entitled, Some Weird Things Happened in My House When I Was a Teen.
For full disclosure, I would consider myself an open-minded skeptic. These things happened after I suddenly lost my dad, who I was pretty close to illness as a kid, plus there was a lot of dysfunction in my family after his passing, so I'm not sure if these were just the imagination of a child who was grieving her father while living in a dysfunctional household or what. I still feel really spooked out when I think about them and have trouble explaining some of the stuff. The first weird thing I noticed was a shadow I saw on the living room couch. The couch was in a really well-lit area next to a big window, so it was a weird place for a shadow. I don't even know if shadow would be the right word here. It was like every time I walked past the living room out of the corner of my eye, I'd see the black shadow-like silhouette of a woman sitting on the couch. I could name specific details, like it always looked like she was sitting with her legs curled up on the couch beside her, and her hair pulled up into some sort of bun. Of course, when I'd turn to look, there would be nothing there. But this kept up for years. I did start to think I was maybe unwell or just imagining things, until other people, like my brother's girlfriend, who I had never told about this shadow woman, started complaining to me that they kept thinking they saw a woman on the couch out of the corner of their eye, but when they turned to look, nothing was there. The next weird thing was how it kept happening that I would wake up in the middle of the night to the sound of people talking downstairs, sometimes yelling even, and I always had a really weird unsettled feeling when this happened. I was always scared to open my door when this was happening because it just felt so off, but in the times I was brave enough to open my door and check, there would be nothing. Just dark downstairs, no one down there, and everyone else in the house asleep in their rooms. I started sleeping with my TV on for years to try to drown out the sounds. Again, I thought I was maybe imagining things, maybe I was unwell or developing some disorder, until other people in the house started complaining about hearing it too. Sometimes my TV would just turn off on its own while I was sleeping, and I'd still wake up to the talking downstairs. Back when family computer rooms were still a thing, I'd obviously stay on the family computer until pretty late at night, as a lot of young teens would do, checking MySpace or whatever. Except the family computer room was right next to the basement, and when I'd stay up at night in the computer room, I'd hear footsteps going up and down the basement stairs. I also got a weird feeling about it and was sometimes afraid to open the door, but I sometimes did at my mom's insistence that maybe one of the cats or dogs had gotten left down in the basement. Of course, it was always dark with nothing down there the few times I felt brave enough to check. When I was an older teen, I had a laptop, and I started having issues that even when the laptop was fully turned off, every morning at around 3 to 3:15 a.m. it would turn on and start playing random songs or random YouTube videos. Maybe there was a technical explanation for this, like a virus or an alarm or something. It would always do it at around 3 a.m., and it was random if it would open my music player or YouTube, and it was usually the last song or video I had watched or listened to, even though my laptop was turned off and closed. Maybe with all the other stuff going on I was just projecting something paranormal onto a glitchy laptop. One of my weirdest memories was one day I was sitting on my bed working on a paper for school. I remember I had my TV on, and I remember Scrubs was on. I'm really dating all of this, aren't I? When I got that weird feeling that you get when someone is watching you from my doorway. I looked in the doorway, and I just saw a face and nothing else. No body, and the face already looked a little transparent. It was weird, it was like an orangey color, and the eyes were really big and black, kind of reminded me a bit of an owl. After a few seconds of staring back at it, it just sort of disintegrated into thin air. I just got up and slammed my door shut and freaked out about it for a bit. A few years ago my mom sold the house. I went to visit for the last time as a grown woman in my early 30s with my husband, and weirdly enough part of me almost wanted something weird to happen while I was visiting. Nothing weird or paranormal did happen though. My mom claimed she got rid of whatever was there. Maybe she did, or maybe we were all just sick with grief and family dysfunction when I was a teen. It was all still weird though, and I still don't know what to make of it.
Well, aren't you just full of yourself? I mean, what makes you think the ghost was watching you? He may have just wanted to watch Scrubs. After all, it was a pretty awesome show. Next, we have one from a young lady that was pranked by a ghost when she was younger. Well, everyone knows what kind of wicked sense of humor we ghosts have. We call this one the ghostly pranks.
I was reminiscing with my partner about our old church youth group last night and was reminded about this experience. I feel like every middle school had a ghost story of some sort. In ours, the girls' locker room was haunted by a girl who had passed away after a medical emergency, but I never saw or experienced anything there. The middle school that was just a mile up the street had haunted bathrooms. This school had a really nice field and people liked to play soccer there. Our youth group was participating in a soccer tournament with other local youth groups that year. So, we used that field to practice. The haunted bathroom happened to be near the field and was left open during the daytime. One day, trying to hide from being forced to play, I announced I needed to go and scurried in there. It was completely empty when I went inside. I remember the door being particularly squeaky when I opened it and closed it. So were the stall doors. So, I'm sitting there chilling, and I hear the light switch being turned off and the lights go out. Then I hear a kid giggling. So I get up and open the stall door to peek out, the only light coming from overhead windows above the bathroom mirrors. In the reflection of the mirrors, I see someone run into a stall and the stall door close. There are 2 feet under the stall that climb up and disappear. Again, I hear giggling. So I'm mad, thinking some kid is messing with me, and they climbed onto the toilet to hide. So I opened the stall door, and there's no one in there. I checked every stall, and all of them are empty. Suddenly I was being pelted by something small, and the lights turned back on. It was so weird, and I looked down and see dimes on the floor. I picked them up and got out of there. Thinking back, I realized besides the giggles when the kid moved, I didn't hear anything else. But every time I opened a stall door, they squeaked, and so did the bathroom door. I later learned from one of the youth members that went to that school that students tended to avoid going in there because someone would always turn off the lights mid-business, or they would always end up being hit with dimes, usually 4 or 5. And that's the story of how I was pranked by a ghost in a middle school bathroom.
You know what you should have done? You should have told the ghost, "Hey, do you know what would have been really funny if instead of dimes, you threw 10s and 20s? Our last terrifying tale is from a registered nurse who had a spooky experience in the wee hours of the morning. It's called, "I saw a coworker who had passed away."
I just found this subreddit because I really have nowhere else to discuss this. I'm a night shift RN. We recently had a coworker pass tragically, but I'm newer to the hospital and only knew of him because he transported patients, and he was always in and out of all the departments. I didn't even know his name. Sunday evening, someone mentioned his passing, and when I asked for a description I knew exactly who it was. He had a very distinct look, walk, and air about him. I had a fleeting thought of how sad that news was, but I didn't know him, so I got busy and never thought of it again. The next morning when my shift was done, I took the employee elevator to the ground floor and to an area mostly just for staff. As I exited the elevator to head right down the hall, I saw the guy who I thought had passed away to my left, just a few feet away. I glanced at him and thought, oh good, he's not the one everyone was describing. Must be someone else. Then I headed the other direction and went home. That night back at work, people were again discussing him, and I finally asked if anyone had a picture of him. One of my coworkers pulled up his FB and my stomach sank. It was in fact the guy I saw in the hall, 100%, not a single doubt. So I blurted out, I saw him this morning when I got off the elevator. My coworker said, yeah, that sounds about right for this place. He didn't seem surprised at all. But I'm shook. I can't reconcile this. I know who I saw without any doubt, but I also can't believe I saw a ghost. My hospital is old and known for excellent employee retention, so I asked several of the longtime employees if there is anyone else who works in his department that looks like him. We wore specific colors for each department, i.e. blue for RNs, gray for transport or radiology, black for RT, etc. They all said there is no one else who looks like this man. Anyway, I'm baffled. Why me, why him, and why can't I accept the possibility that I did see him? I'm fascinated by this type of stuff, but I've certainly never encountered anything paranormal or remotely this bizarre. And I can't talk about it at work because it sounds insane. I guess I just needed to get it off my chest.
Wait, why would you not want to discuss it with any of your colleagues? I mean, y'all work in a hospital. Do you honestly think you're the only one that's seen a ghost? Well, are you still feeling so brave, or are you content to remain hiding under your blankets? Well, I do know of one thing that might help some of your courage to return. All you have to do is hit like, subscribe, and share this video. It'll really help us keep the ghosts at bay. However, if you prefer podcasts, then you're in luck, because we also release our videos in podcast form on Spotify. And of course, if any of you have a story to share, then by all means, drop me a line in the comments. But I do want to thank you for stopping by, and I hope the stories we told won't be giving you too many bad dreams. But if they do, then maybe you shouldn't run from them. After all, sometimes it's better to embrace your nightmares.